Hey y'all, welcome to the Liberation is Lit podcast where the power of storytelling is the force of social change. I'm your host, Taylor Simon, and in this podcast, we believe in the profound impact of stories. And I'm so excited to be here today with author and advocate David Ambroz, and we're going to talk a little bit about A Place Called Home, a new memoir, and just advocacy around foster care system, poverty, things like that. So I'm super excited for this conversation. Hi, David.
Good morning. What an introduction. Your energy. My goodness. I'm just starting my coffee and I'm going to just dump it because you just filled up my soul here. Good
Oh
morning.
my gosh. Good morning. Yes, I did have my coffee, so it's working. So to kick us off with our discussion today, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your advocacy around poverty and child welfare? And then also tell us about what led you to tell your story, A Place Called Home.
Oh my goodness. So I'll tell you about myself. So David Ambroz. I live in Los Angeles. I'm a father and a foster father. I'm a Scorpio and a native New Yorker, although I now think of LA as my true spiritual home. But I think what you're getting at is a little bit more about my story. And my story started in New York City. I grew up in the city with my mom, who suffered from a kind of a panoply of mental health challenges and issues. And then my brother and my sister, each a year older than the next. So my mom was homeless when she had me, and me, my brother, and my sister lived in and on the streets of New York City for about 12 years. And through that journey, it was both challenging, horrendous, violent, and scary, but also kind of magical. And it then ended me being up in foster care, which was a crazy and challenging experience. So the nitty gritty of the early life was just being born into the ecosystem of poverty. I think in our country, we couldn't have designed a better system to trap people in poverty if we had sat there and thought of it. So my mom was in it, and therefore we were in it. And it was all that was expected of me, my brother, and my sister. But what I am here today, and my brother and sister as well, we refuse to be statistics. And so through grit, some conniving, a little bit of law breaking, and a whole lot of thrust forward, we today are happy, healthy, successful members of society. And I have dedicated my professional life and my personal life to making sure kids don't grow up the way that I grew up. And you asked, why did I share my story? I got to my late 30s and I realized something really profound, which was I had this incredible tool to affect change. I had been working on policy to help kids, even though that was kind of a, if you will, side part of my life. It it was this tool I never really picked up, which was my own story. And I realized kind of how you introduced the show that one of the best ways to move people from empathy to action is storytelling. And so I wanted to use this tool that I had earned with my early life and advocacy. And I began to think about how best to do that. One thing led to another, as these things do. And I found myself publishing what I always like to think of as both my diary and my hidden photo albums. If anyone's listening has one of those, I'm sure we all do. I just decided to publish it for the use of it as a tool in my memoir. And also to release the shame. I think there's a lot of things that poverty leaves you with in terms of a hangover, one of which is the shameful feeling you have for the things you had to do to survive. So both use it as a tool and kind of clean out my closet so I could live the next 40 plus years of my life just free. And that's what I've chosen to do. And that's the memoir that we're talking about today.
I love how you framed your memoir as a way to clean out your closet so you could be free. And that's essentially a lot of what I do with Liberation is Lit is that that empowering people to release themselves from the shame and embrace vulnerability through telling their own stories, but also what you said about storytelling is a way to move people from empathy to action. So you're using your story as a tool for all of that is literally all I do with Liberation is Lit. And I love how you had this realization after working in policy reform for so long, and that's one of the aspects of the book that I've really liked is you using kind of yourself as a case study to show how from the system or the state or just the structure system of poverty that we have in this country keeps people often keeps people poor or forces people to do things that they shouldn't have to do in order to survive.
Hmm.
So, um, what do you think is the difference in responsibility of like the state or the system and community or family or chosen family for care? What are the differences between their responsibilities in your eyes?
Interesting. So I will get there. I will tell you a quick story. I one of my earliest memories is begging on the platform of Grand Central in the morning. And my family and I would beg on the mornings because the commuters and people are more generous before they have a bad day. And I remember so distinctly this morning that the crowd parted a few feet in front of me and then came back together behind me. And not a single person looked at me. And the lesson was just crystal clear is that my life did not matter. And when I think about children and families in poverty in this country, I think we collectively flow around the issue. It has become white noise, unremarked and unremarkable. In our country, not since 1999, in a presidential debate, has the phrase child poverty been uttered. We have 10 million children living in abject poverty in this country. We talk about coal mining almost every debate, and perhaps we should. But there are more baristas in Southern California than coal miners in America. And it doesn't mean one is to the exclusion of the other. It just simply means sometimes we forget to see what's right in front of us. So when you ask about the responsibility of both society and or a family, they're not different. We are a family. We are stuck together in a space. We have to follow certain rules and we live amongst each other. I don't know what else is family. It's messy, it's argumentative. You're always grumpy at Uncle so and so and Aunt so and so. They don't, their politics don't align with yours, so you avoid the topic at Christmas dinner. We are a family, and for good or for bad, we have to do better. We can no longer look at children, 10 million, and decide that they're not our problem, that it's okay that we have intergenerational poverty and violence. And it's simply a decision we have to make. 10 years before I was born, we went to the moon. And it always perplexes me what happened to that American spirit. I believe it's still there. Choices like ending child poverty are hard, as they should be, but they're achievable. This is not something mysterious. I want us to make the choice to end it. I want us to realize that we're better as a family, both morally, but also economically. This doesn't make any sense. We can do better. I want us to choose to do better. And that's how I think of family. We are collectively as a country a family and we have to help each other. And it doesn't mean blindly so, but certainly children should not be culpable for what the adults in their lives have done or not done. And we collectively have to do better by them.
That's so interesting that you say that because I remember sitting in a Senate education subcommittee here in South Carolina, and the debate that was up for the next budget was free lunch for school children, and the focus of the conversation was, well, the parents aren't filling out the form. I don't understand why they wouldn't fill out the form, or I can't believe some schools are just taking away the lunch tray after they've given it to the child because, "Oh, you have lunch debt. You can't eat today." And, I'm just thinking about how so many of these adults, not necessarily the parents, because just reading after your experiences, adults are humans too, and sometimes they have trouble having their needs
Hmm.
met, and so that affects their responsibility with their children. Um, but I just think about all of these adults in this room discussing this topic were so okay with letting the children suffer and punishing the children for things that adults are doing and almost using children as a way to punish the adults for living in poverty.
Sure.
And so I thought that was just,
Such a good point.
yeah,
Yeah.
just such like how do we do this as a society? How do we think this way?
We've started to fetishize
This
process.
progress. Mhm.
And when one fetishizes process, you begin to lose focus on the outcomes. So you create this high wire that if someone steps off, they fall instead of thinking about where you're trying to get them. So you failed to fill out forms, therefore. And I remember in the book, I talk about how my mom, homeless, mentally ill, with no childcare, was required to write down her home address in order to receive housing assistance. And we were homeless, or to go to the welfare line and have to spend days with not being able to make an appointment and then being told, well, are you looking for work? It's just absurd. So I would say to us collectively, as not even left or right, but just as a moral people, we can do better. However, we need to get off our back foot. We need to stop being okay with the debate around starving children receiving or not receiving free lunch. We need to create a moral vision of our country of plenty, or as someone recently called it, one of my favorite thinkers, abundance. I love that word. Helping people is not a zero sum game. And so, what is the vision we as a moral and just people want to move toward? So, constantly find us in these debates on the, if you will, progressive side, debating things that are just in isolation debatable, but collectively, when you look at them holistically, are just absurd. They don't make sense. So I was recently at a town hall speaking. I was being interviewed by the Los Angeles mayor, who is just a phenomenal leader in her career for foster children. And she prompted me on education, and I made a comment. And then someone in the audience literally stood up and said, shouldn't all kids go to wealthy private schools, all foster kids? And I didn't even reflect, which is not typical of me. I just blurted out, no. And I think this young person who was just this advocate, thinking he was advocating for something good for children, was shocked. And he's like, why? I said, let's think about this differently. What if today we outlawed all private schools? How quickly do you think art, music would be returned to public schools? How quickly do you think schools would become safe? How quickly do you think nurses would be available 24/7 at public schools? And it's not that I do or don't think we should do that, but as a people, as a moral people, we need to begin to create a vision, not of what we're against, but holistically what we're for. People want to be inspired. We've done the fear thing. It's not working for us. We need to do a different thing. So I want to create this moral vision where, for example, what if we kept public schools open 24/7? What if we provided free daycare in those schools? What if schools had, I don't know, a clinic in every single school where parents and kids could get basic health care? None of this is inventing new laws of physics. This is a choice. Where is that moral collective vision? And I want us to move toward that idea of abundance, as so well eloquently said by people like Ezra Klein. We can do better. But I think collectively we've lacked the cohesive vision to inspire other people. We've instead constantly debated what people put in front of us, be it bathrooms, be it school lunches, be it all of these things. And it's not that they're not important, they're very important, especially for the people that are affected. But we are not going to win the public conversation and move policy at the meta scale that we need to without a vision.
I definitely agree. And that's why, again, I really love the power of stories because you don't have to just talk about what is awful. You can talk about what you hope, what you envision, what you want to dream for the future. And I think that is another powerful potential of storytelling. And I love that you say that about how you are contributing to the collective visioning of what we want to see as society. And I know it can be hard work, and sometimes you may get pushback or even just reliving, like, your own experiences, some of the negative things. So, as someone who is very vocal in this fight. How do you take care of yourself as a survivor and an advocate?
Well, first, I would say to all of us that emotion is a superpower. And I think people have this vision, and I used to, and I no longer do, that showing or sharing emotion is something that is bad. And that I think you've asked a very important question, but I think the interpretation people might have is how do you suppress that? How do you not show that? And I think part of why we're so alienated from each other and grumpy with each other is the lack of empathy with each other. And part of that is our alienation by hiding our humanity. We are emotional people, and I have fought hard to be able to express my emotion. It was not easy. So, first, I cry. I cry in public. I cry when I talk about things. It is cathartic. I choke up when I do public speaking. In my audio book of my memoir, I read it and I express emotion, much to the chagrin of some of the editors who wanted me to re record. I think empathy and the demonstration of emotion is this amazing thing that the human spirit thrives on. So, how do I care for myself? I let it out. I let it out. It opens hearts, it opens minds, it connects us as a species to each other. That's one way I do it. The other way is it's so like exercising kind of sucks sometimes, right? But you do it every day and eventually you get stronger and your cardio health gets better. This is what it's like to be an advocate. You put the work in. It is difficult. The day to day is not always what you want it to be, but over time, you hopefully see the work that you've engaged in blossom. And that's certainly something that I have felt throughout my advocacy career. So how do I take care of myself? I win. I win. I am moving us toward a vision where children in this country are not starving. I'm moving this country forward in a way where queer kids in foster care are not cured of their gender identity, expression, or sexual orientation. I win because homeless children coming out of foster care should not be homeless. We just should not have that. I win is how I take care of myself. It's important to achieve victory, but I also learn from all of the years of what I would say is temporary failure. So that's okay too. And that depresses me and makes me sad. But I sit in that emotion, I think about it, and then I use it to fuel my fire. I also have a cadre of great friends, chosen family as well, and they all nourish me. And then other than that, I drink a lot of coffee. I love champagne, and I have a baby who is just hilarious. So when I need a little moment of reality, I can just watch him stumble around and laugh, and my soul is slightly healed. So those are some of the thoughts I have on that very insightful question.
Oh my gosh, I was like, are you living in my brain? Because radical vulnerability is something I'm constantly exploring and experimenting with because on the outside, people would say, oh, I'm a very vulnerable person, but I feel like I tailor this, if pun intended, because my name is Taylor, this experience of okay, I am vulnerable about what kinds of feelings I have, but I'm expressing them to you after I've already intellectualized them. So it's expressing emotion without expressing emotion.
Mm,
So I love that encouraging people to be vulnerable and use their emotions to fuel their fire.
mhm.
And speaking of that fire, what are some of your upcoming projects that you have going on?
Oh, it's so interesting. So, but I just have to say one thing you said struck me. Yeah, when I was a kid, and I don't think I write about this in the memoir, but we were on the subway where we lived, and my mom was trying to explain to me why people were painted blue, and a lot of them. And my mom says, and I quote, "Honey, it's the Super Bowl." And I'm a homeless kid. I'm hungry. I have lice, and I'm like, "What?" And she's explained this to me. I'm like, It's I can't remember January, February, it was cold, and I'm like, "Let me get this right." People are so fanatically obsessed with a team that doesn't care about them truly as individuals. Players come and go. billionaires buy one team, trade it to another, move it to a different city, you know, whatever. And people paint themselves that color. She's like, yeah. I'm like, that makes no sense to me. I watch sports. I enjoy sports. But what I've never quite understood is where our values are collectively, where we know the statistics as a people on athletes, but we have no idea the graduation rate of our local school systems. We have no idea of the number of children being sex trafficked out of foster care, which is the largest source of sex trafficked children in North America. We don't have that idea because we sort of are too busy following sports and celebrities. And I do both of those things. Let me just say, I scroll on my phone, but I do so with agency. And I do know the stats of my local school systems. And I do know the work that needs to be done around child sexual trafficking in our country. So I want us to figure out what color that is so I can paint myself and walk around in inappropriate places, fanaticize with a logo on my head. What is the logo for children? Because I will wear it on all of my clothing. I still don't know why in our country, in Los Angeles, there are 4 streets named after Kobe Bryant. There are 0 streets named after a social worker in California. I don't understand our values. And I want us to realize that, is that the value we would tell our children is right? Probably not. So I want us to kind of reassess things and get obsessed with the outcomes and just trade information and create the social space where it's hip, cool, and fun to talk about these matters. So I think what you said was really important. I just wanted to share kind of my reflection off of it. And I've completely forgotten your question. Oh, what am I excited by?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I'll give you a concrete example. So there are concrete policy solutions in my memoir, especially the afterword. One one small idea that I think could be transformative. 50% of America's homeless, 50%, 50, experienced foster care. It's the largest correlation, not causation, more than alcoholism, more than drug addiction, more than veteran status. It is the number one correlation, not causation. And I think the stat this year, if I recall correctly, is something between, I think, 33 and 39% of the children coming out of foster care will become homeless almost immediately. They're not addicted, they're not chronic, they're just becoming homeless. So we get these kids out of dangerous situations, we take care of them, we spend the money, and then at 18 or 21, we're like, "Peace out, good luck." And then we're shocked when they fail to thrive. If you're a parent listening, is your kid ready to be independent at 18? Or even, I'm not ready and I'm in my mid 40s. I still wish I had mom and dad. So I want us to do something different. So I was trying to figure out, like, what is the thing we might do? And what I came to was like, very simple, build housing. So I am working on a project here in Los Angeles to build a dorm at a community college. And the idea would be you could emancipate into housing, education, or vocational skill for 2 to 3 years and then move on with your life. Every foster kid might be guaranteed this pathway. They don't have to choose it. They can do whatever they want at 18. But imagine our country with just 10 of these dorms spread across would end the pipeline to homelessness from foster care in America. America, we can build a building. So people are just so perplexed. I'm like, it's not that complicated. We figured out our smartphones and how to TikTok and all these things. And then we're like, well, I don't know what to do about homeless kids. Build housing. Very simple. So I want us to realize our own power to not imagine the complicated, but really the simple and do those things. And so I've tried to share those ideas in my memoir, in my online presence, and then amplify other great thinkers that are doing just incredible work in imagining a more moral, just, and humane future for our kids.
That's so interesting because I hear about all these places like, "Oh, there's a housing crisis, there's a housing crisis." And I'm like, well, millionaire and billionaires are fueling the housing crisis by buying multiple properties up and then renting them out at rates that people cannot afford them. And it's so funny how everybody's like, "I don't know how to solve the housing crisis." And it's like, limit investment properties. Like, so
I
people actually have pathways to homeownership and affordable rent.
I would even complicate it further. So I don't remember exactly. These are directionally accurate, but not specifically so. I think something like 70% of Los Angeles or 75% is zoned single family. And when you don't allow density, what happens? The costs go up because the supply is limited, even as the demand increases. So I think this idea is important to say we, as the majority of Los Angeles, just as an example, need to allow density. And we don't want it. We love our single family homes. And it's not just wealthy people, it's all of us. 75% of LA, I don't even remember the exact number, but it's something like that, are creating constraint in supply for housing. And what do we all think is going to happen over time? Homelessness, inaffordability, increasing rents. So it's us collectively too. Sometimes I think we fail to realize that we are the system. We as individuals are the system. We vote every 4 years and we think that's going to keep this a republic, and it will not. We need hyper local, active consumption of politics. I constantly, my friends are like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, schedule civic participation in your calendar twice a month for 1 hour. Log on to a meeting, go to something, volunteer. I don't even know. Figure out what works for you. But we have to look in the mirror and realize that we're at fault as well. It's not just this 1%. We're at fault. We have created a civic society with a failing social welfare safety net because we have made elective decisions. There's more of us than any other small population, and we have just absconded from our responsibility. The very moment of our full enfranchisement as a country, we've walked away from the one tool that can achieve change: politics, especially local politics. Most people can name at least one justice of the Supreme Court. People can't even name who represents them in the state legislature or county supervisor. Yet these are the issues that affect us on a day to day, and we shrug. Cynicism is a luxury. Cynicism is a breath of smoke that you're blowing into the face of a baby. It's abhorrent, but it's what we do. We shrug our shoulders. And that responsibility is on you, is on me. It's on us collectively, not just some sort of small percentage. We have walked away. And that's why we have 10 million children in this country in poverty. And I think it, 1 in 4 kids in America are hungry. What are their parents eating? We have just shrugged our shoulders and we look outward, but it's us. And we can just make a different choice. We can make a different choice. Other than the laws of physics, everything is a choice. We can make a different choice. I want us to make a different choice. I want us to choose that this is the last generation of American children to start with that will grow up, live, or experience poverty of any level, but especially homelessness, especially homelessness.
I totally agree. It's also us too. Part of why billionaires stay billionaires is because we keep choosing to give them our money through their products. So I definitely agree. It is that this and how can we choose differently? And kind of my response illustrated, it's easier to shift blame on another person, and it's harder to look in the mirror and see how are we contributing to
Mhm.
this as a society? What are we choosing to do to facilitate these conditions as well? Because the system is made up of people. So yeah.
That's right.
So my last question for you is what I asked everybody. What advice would you offer listeners who want to make a positive impact in their communities? And you have already given a lot of practical advice from paying attention to the local and paying it and looking into the mirror and seeing how we can choose differently and we can take personal responsibilities. But is there anything else you want to offer listeners?
I think we need a new learning, and it requires a culture shift. And so the new learning is we have a culture as individuals and collectively, therefore, of learned helplessness. And there is a tattoo on my body that says illegitimi non carborundum, which means don't let the bastards grind you down in Latin. And for me, bastards aren't always people. They're sometimes processes or things. Change is hard. Change is hard. It's hard to get a tree planted on my street. I've been trying for about a year. It's hard to do these things, right? That's okay. Change is supposed to be hard, even if you're right. So we need to unlearn as individuals the helplessness that we feel and realize it's a yield sign, not a stop sign, and keep going. Just make sure you're safe and go. And so what I want us to do as individuals, in addition to some of the specific things I've said, is to challenge that. When you hear a joke in your social circle about a politician, just stop them and say, what have you done? When's the last city council meeting you went to? Tell me about the number of hours you volunteered in your city. We need to stop denigrating people in the system and realize that they are on the front line on a war on poverty that we've all collectively abandoned. My sister, Jessica, is a social worker, and I once asked her, I said, Jessica, what do you do for a living? And she said, paperwork, David. Here's my sister with an advanced degree from a prestigious university, decades of experience, and she can't afford to buy a home within 30 miles of Los Angeles. What if my sister, instead of being attacked by the public every time there's a death or something terrible in the system, what if instead we realize that we're the problem? And my sister was given interest-free home loan after 10 years of good service from the county. She could afford to live here. What if her kids went to state schools for free? All of a sudden, you have a woman who's nearly burnt out, keeping her incredible, vast experience as a tool for this war on poverty and helping children and families thrive. That can happen in your community, listener. That could happen tomorrow. Why don't more people foster? For many of them, it's economic. They're worried about retirement. They're worried about their kids' college. They're worried about healthcare. What if we said to those middle class people, you're going to be treated like a county or federal postal worker? We're going to give you a pension and your kids will go to school for free. And after that, after 10 years of good service, all of a sudden, these folks who are on the front line and paid nothing to do this work would be honored and recognized for the contribution they're making to our society. We find the money to subsidize stadiums. We find the money to subsidize weapons of war. And we should, perhaps we should. It's a dangerous world. I don't think it's an either or. What I want us to realize as individuals is the change can happen. But first, we must look in the mirror and realize I am not helpless. And if you need to say that to yourself every day in the mirror, say it and then go do something. And if you don't know what to do, use this thing called the internet. Find something you're passionate about, whatever it is, bread baking, tree planting, I don't know, and go make that part of your community. Go lift up. I have a friend I was shocked to see. He has what he calls the Wednesday Volunteer Club. It's a very busy person, very prestigious in his career. And every Wednesday he goes and does something. I had no idea. And so I'm joining him in some of those. What can you do? That is bespoke. That is unique to you. But you damn well better figure it out because this country is depending on you. These kids that don't vote, these poor people with less political power rely on you. And so if you're listening to a podcast, you're probably able to do something more than we're all collectively doing. So do it and realize that we are not impotent. We are powerful as individuals, especially locally. So that's something I would say the individual can do. Maybe not as specific as you were driving at, but very much, I think, the first step into making this the just and humane nation that we are.
No, I love that. And I love that your sister's a social worker. I am an LMSW myself. So trying to find ways to empower myself to make change outside of the
Hmm.
system. So, but that is great advice, just finding ways. And I love the idea of like scheduling time in your calendar to be politically engaged. Like I have all of the state school board meetings on my calendar ahead of time, a year in advance. So I know to go to those meetings. So definitely scheduling time to just like 30 minutes a week to make all your calls about your different issues to your different elected officials. You like one lunch break a week, you can knock all of that out. So that's amazing. So thank you so much, David, for this amazing conversation and feel fired up just like talking to you for this short time. Where can people find you and keep up with the great advocacy work that you're doing?
Thank you for the compliment. Folks can find me. I'm very active on Instagram, HJD Ambroz, one word, and or my website, which also links to that, davidambroz.com. And I hope people like you pick up the memoir and share the story with others. I think we need to create that interweb of connected people like you that are out there. I think we are the majority. I think we are Dumbledore's army, and we need to be called to service. And sharing stories, as I've tried to do in my memoir, is one way to do it. I'm a voracious reader. I love reading about you and the work that you do. And I hope we all stay connected. So that's where you can find me and what I'm up to.
Yes, and I will link
Okay.
a place called home, both the physical book and audiobook, and how you can support Liberation is Lit through that purchase. I'll link all of that on the show notes, as well as where you can find and keep up with David. And thank you, listeners, for being a part of the Liberation is Lit podcast. If you have any stories to share, want to suggest topics, or just want to connect, you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at liberationislit.com or at liberationislit, or you can find us at liberationislit.com. You enjoyed the episode, please consider leaving a review. And remember, your voice matters. And together, through the lens of stories, we're going to make a difference to the world. Till next time.